So now the GOP response. Meatball Ron materialized. He crawled out of his hole and actually decided to say something about this. Here's what he finally has. He tweets, quote, and let's put this on the screen, "The weaponization of the legal system to advance a political agenda turns the rule of law on its head. It is un-American. The Soros-backed Manhattan DA has consistently bent the law to downgrade felonies and to excuse criminal conduct. Yet now he is stretching the law to target a political opponent. Florida will not assist in an extradition request given the questionable circumstances at issue with this Soros-backed Manhattan prosecutor and his political agenda." So a couple of things to say there, Krystal. Number one, he's bringing out the extradition canard, but after Trump has made clear that he's likely to surrender and arraign to appear tough. Two, now he's decided, now it's not silly season, apparently. Now he apparently does know something about hush money to porn stars. It's just so clear to me. It's just so clear to me that he got the pushback from Trump and from the MAGA world, who were very upset with him, internalized it, and then when the indictment happened, decided to come, full bore. It is interesting, too, because he doesn't even say Trump's name, which almost makes it appear even stranger. It's like talking in the third person. But at the end of the day, you are still defending Trump. And this just highlights the power dynamic of all of this to me. He had to speak out because he is the governor of Florida, and because Trump is the most popular Republican, and because people want to hear this from Ron DeSantis. So this just shows me that, the third way, the wishy-washy, trying to politically calculate your way through this, it's just not going to work.
My read is the same as yours, Saagar. He had a sort of natural experiment focus group with when Trump announced I'm about to get indicted. He failed the test. He took in okay, here's what people wanted me to do. So this time around, I'm going to do what people told me they want me to do right out of the gate. So it definitely smells of very politically calculated. To be the most sympathetic to his position that I possibly could, again, there's no good play here. There is no good response for him. No. Because obviously last time he tried staying quiet, that was a disaster. This is probably the best possible response he can have in terms of the Republican base, but it once again just hands Trump power. So to me, this is a microcosm of the issue that he faces in the GOP primary overall, which is there are no really good moves for him to make. It's an impossible position effectively for him to be in, at least, just trying to take on Trump directly or not take on Trump directly. There is no good move on the chessboard. So that's kind of how I looked at it. But yeah, in terms of the Republican response, it was across the board. Glenn Youngkin also came out right away and said very similar things. Yep. I think I saw Kevin McCarthy. This was not a tough one for them to react to whatsoever. I think the way the public will process this is going to be just a Rorschach test of how they feel about Trump. We've seen multiple polls at this point that show effectively that, people think he did it. Even a majority of people think that these charges and allegations, specifically around hush money payments, are either somewhat serious or very serious. They also feel that it is political. So then it makes it kind of a wash in terms of a public reaction, and does once again come down to just what is your pre-existing feeling about Donald Trump and whether he deserves to be prosecuted. My guess is that we've spent a lot of time, and I think it's, this is the case against the former president. I think it makes a lot of sense to dig into the legal details and all of the landscape of what is entailed here. I think for most people, they're not actually going to care that much about the details of the charges, whether it includes Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal or not, or even that much, whether it's over hush money payments or January 6th and fake elector schemes, et cetera. I think it's more just about whether you're the person who has committed crimes and deserves to be held accountable for it. And however you felt about that going in is probably going to result in your reaction to these specific charges against Trump. So in some ways, I have sort of changed my view on this a little bit. I actually think the details of these particular charges don't matter that much in terms of the public. I do think that these are ones that are the easiest for Republicans to defend, whereas some of the January 6th fake elector stuff would put Mike Pence and others in a more difficult position in terms of how they would react.
Right, and that's why immediately Mike Pence came out and said that the indictment is, quote, an outrage. I even have the Glenn Youngkin tweet you alluded to, the most probably center-right governor in the entire country. Quote, "It is beyond belief that District Attorney Alvin Bragg has indicted a former president and current presidential candidate for pure political gain. Arresting a presidential candidate on a manufactured basis should not happen in America. The left's continued attempts to weaponize our judicial system erode people's faith in the American justice system, and it needs to stop." So when you've got Glenn Youngkin, Mike Pence, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, all of those people coming to your defense, who do you think the king is? It's Trump. And so, as you said, in terms of how people will digest this, you're talking a general election. Well, if you're a GOP primary voter, you know who the number one target is of the left. Well, that's how most of these people vote. And one of the reasons that this is worth focusing on is we just showed everybody yesterday a Fox News poll that showed Trump at 54% strength in the Republican primary. Why did that happen? Why did he gain 10% on a month? Well, potential indictment was listed as one of the main reasons that people were flocking towards Trump. So in terms of his primary victory, or this has made it so much more likely. Now, look, of course, anything can happen. He actually could get convicted, although I don't think that even would really hurt. Maybe outside of black swan scenarios, though, politically, for him in a GOP primary, which is really all that really matters right now, this is nothing but helpful. As you can see, everybody's coming. Tim Scott's coming to his defense. I haven't seen Nikki Haley yet, but as you said, every standard Republican has a take now out there. The only people who are, not protesting are like Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, which shows you like he still has a hold on 98% or so of the GOP, who all have to come to his defense really in a moment of need. And if you have to come to somebody's defense on something like that, then you're in a position of weakness and he's in a position of strength.
Here's another question I'm curious for your reaction to, Saagar, which is, there was a lot of nervousness about with regard to the January 6th and fake elector scheme, potential indictments. There's a lot of nervousness around okay, what does it mean to indict a former president? And what has the reaction in the country been? Trump has obviously tried to frighten those who are looking into charging him into thinking oh my God, this would just tear the country apart. And I'm not sure we can do it. And we'd all love to pretend these decisions aren't political and that those sort of calculations don't weigh in, but we know that they do. So one thing I was wondering is if you have this first indictment and there isn't this huge the death and destruction that Trump is warning of, does that make some of the other individuals, the Georgia folks or the special counsel in Washington, does that make them actually less nervous about indicting Trump because, the seal has already been broken in a way, the dam has already been broken and the country was able to survive? So perhaps that sort of encourages them okay, we can move forward with our own charges here and it's not going to be the destruction of the republic.
It's certainly possible, but at the same time, first of all, I think from what I've seen, amongst a lot of MAGA figures, all of them are saying look, we're not we're do this peacefully. We're going to fight this in the legal system, all of that, because I think they feel pretty sure that they could probably beat this in a court of law. I genuinely have no idea, and it's not even worth speculation, because, it could be that they don't protest for indictment, but then who knows, maybe the dam would break whenever it comes to conviction. Or maybe people learn their lesson from January 6th and they're like, hey, you know what, I don't need to be involved in some BS like this, but I will come out and vote and make make it very clear, how I feel. It's a complete, range of possibilities.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know. In terms of, the indictment schedule and all of that, the other problem, though, that I could easily say is, let's say that this, charge, frivolous, in my view, is one that gets struck down immediately. Well, it actually looks more bulletproof and stronger. So then, if you do come out and you charge him with Fulton County, then it's just going to set even more of a public expectation. Whereas the facts of the case on that one are much harder for him, or on a January 6th one, or even on a classified documents one, for legally, to have some standing. So yeah, this is a good thing. Why don't we go ahead and move to the political section here, because I think it's worth talking about what the fallout from this might be.